Okay, now let's move on to the last part. Okay, we will combine alcohols and carboxylic acid chemical reactions together. Now, for alcohols, one other thing you must take note is this. Okay, one of the reactions that alcohol undergo is actually this thing called oxidation. Okay, now, how does it undergo oxidation? So alcohols, when you say undergo oxidation, it actually gains an oxygen. So alcohols, when you oxidize it, what do they become? So alcohols, if you let it undergo oxidation, okay, this O means oxidation. Okay, what you're going to get is your carboxylic acid plus water. Okay, so alcohols undergo oxidation to give you carboxylic acid and water. This is something interesting. Now, how do we oxidize it? We actually tend to use this thing called KMnO4, which is your potassium permanganate. Oh, sorry, I mean potassium manganate 7. So to oxidize my alcohol, what I'll use is potassium manganate 7. I'll put it inside there. And what's going to happen is that my alcohols will turn into carboxylic acid and water. Okay, that's one way. The other way is you let it oxidize by air. That is why sometimes when your alcohol, you leave it too long in the open, the alcohol will have a sour smell, because the alcohols have actually turned into carboxylic acid. So this is the first reaction that alcohol can undergo. Now, for alcohols, we will not be moving on to looking at number 2. You know why? Because alcohols, actually, the only thing you need to focus on is on the oxidation. The rest of the other thing is about how we can produce alcohol. So the next part we talk about producing alcohol. Okay, this is something that we must need to know. How can we produce alcohol? The first one actually I've gone through is dehydration. Okay, it's like adding water to ethene. Okay, adding water to ethene. In this case, especially when we talk about the alcohol here, we're referring to the 2-carbon alcohol, which is also known as the ethanol. It has the formula of C2H5OH. So how do we prepare alcohol? In this case here, we want to prepare ethanol. Okay, it's actually, first one, we can use this hydration to ethene. So what we do is we add water to our C2H4, and what we're going to get is a C2H5OH. So hydration of ethene produces alcohol. The second one, which is a bit more application to real life, okay, in the sense it's something that we can try at home, is actually the fermentation. Okay, you see this word fermentation, you know that has to do with some bacteria or some yeast or some organic stuff, or some cells. So it undergo fermentation. Okay, so to produce alcohol, you can undergo fermentation of starch or sugar. Okay, fermentation of starch and sugar. So what actually happens when you pick your sugar, okay, and put it with yeast? You put it with yeast there. What's going to happen is the sugar will be broken down by the yeast. And what's the product of this fermentation? What you're going to get is ethanol, which is what we want, plus carbon dioxide. Okay, so when I got a high sugar, I got sugar solution, I put it with yeast. What the yeast is going to help me do is to break it down to give me ethanol and carbon dioxide. So for alcohols, the chemical reactions that we have is actually combustion, which is the one that we mentioned in the front. Okay, combustion. It undergoes oxidation to give you carboxylic acid. Then the next part we talk about is how we can produce it. We talk about hydration of ethene. Right, not to ethene, sorry, this is of ethene. Okay, hydration of ethene. The other one is fermentation of starch or sugar. So this is regards to what reaction alcohol can take place, and also how we can produce the alcohol. Now, the last one, obviously, we will talk about is your last homologous series, which is your carboxylic acid. So last one we talk about is our carboxylic acid. Now, most of the time in organic chemistry, you will see reactions about alcohol reactions about alkane and alkene. For carboxylic acid, it's generally quite boring. Okay, quite boring. Now, why? Because actually you know most of its properties. Because it's an acid. So since it's an acid, but actually this is a weak acid. Okay, since it's a weak acid, although it's a weak acid, it's still an acid. So what will happen? Okay, you undergo the first one, acid will react with my metal. What you're gonna get? Salt plus hydrogen. So this is the first reaction for your carboxylic acid. The second reaction is your typical acid plus carbonate. So you can see all of the acid reactions are coming out. Acid plus carbonate will give you salt plus water plus carbon dioxide. Okay, and the last one that we're going to look at is acid plus bases, which is actually your neutralization. What it will produce is salt plus water. So for your reaction of carboxylic acid is generally quite similar to your acid and bases reaction. Acid plus metal, acid plus carbonate, acid plus base. 3 different types of reactions for carboxylic acid. This is on top, okay, I say again, this is on top of what we discussed here, combustion. So carboxylic acid has 4 different reactions. We have combustion, acid plus metal, acid plus carbonate, acid plus base. So these are the 4 different reactions that carboxylic can undergo. Now, most of the time they also ask you, how can we produce? Okay, we talk about producing carboxylic acid. How can we produce it? Okay, to produce it, we have actually discussed it before. Okay, what we do is we'll oxidize alcohols. Okay, so we take our alcohol. In this case here, specifically, we'll actually be looking at ethanoic acid. How can we produce ethanoic acid? Okay, we will take ethanol. Okay, we'll let it react with KMnO4. And what's going to happen is that your alcohol will become ethanol. Sorry, let me rewrite. Sorry, ethanoic acid plus, okay, sorry, plus water. Okay, now, how do we know that the reaction actually has taken place? It's very simple. Look at this fella here. Now, KMnO4 is actually a purple solution. Okay, when it is reacting, or when it has reacted, the purple solution will actually become colorless. So actually when ethanol reacts with potassium manganate, okay, potassium manganate 7, okay, you will see the solution from purple turning to colorless, and that's how we know that ethanol has reacted. Okay, and what is the product that we're going to have? Ethanoic acid plus water. So now, this marks the end of all the chemical reactions. So you look back all the way to the front. Okay, we talked about the structural properties. We talked about the physical properties. Then we went on to talk about the chemical properties for each of them. Now, in summary for exams, okay, in exams, generally, what tends to happen is that for alkane, they like to talk about this substitution reaction. Okay, sorry, this is too thick. Okay, this substitution reaction. Okay, then they will say that alkane is you will hear this word, saturated hydrocarbon. Okay, saturated means everything is a single bond. Okay, saturated means everything is a single bond. For alkene, you'll hear the exam papers keep writing about this. It is unsaturated. Okay, or it's an unsaturated hydrocarbon. Okay, sorry, why did I write hydrogen carbon? It's a hydrocarbon. Okay, so for alkene, it's a unsaturated hydrocarbon, and you'll see these words appearing: addition reaction. Or you'll see this addition polymerization. These words will come in quite regularly. Okay, for addition reaction, you got hydrogenation, you got bromination, you got addition of water. hydrogenation. For engineering reaction, we got hydration. Okay, hydration is the addition of water. Okay, for alcohols, this guys here, okay, there's no really hydrocarbon, any special name for it, but it will undergo one special reaction called your oxidation. Okay, and what is the produce? Oxidation of it will produce carboxylic acid. Okay, now, so alcohol only have this one special reaction, which is oxidation, to produce carboxylic acid. Now, what are the other things to take note is to actually know that how we can produce alcohol. There are two ways. One is by hydration of ethene. The other one is actually by using yeast. So you put the sugar solution plus yeast, and what you're gonna get is your ethanol. Okay, what you're gonna produce is your ethanol. And lastly, carboxylic acid. Okay, we talk about the acid reaction. Okay, the three different acid reaction, and then also we talk about how we can produce it. Okay, production. Okay, to produce it, we all have seen here. Okay, oxidation. So how to produce carboxylic acid? We talk about oxidizing alcohols. So this marks the summary of the organic compounds. Hopefully this helped with regards to some of the questions. Okay, this is a very brief summary of all of the organic compounds.